Welcome back to Unleash the Player, football's realist podcast. Today, we're joined in the studio by one of football's most recent trailblazers, innovators, and pioneers, and more importantly, a friend. I'm delighted to introduce you to Mr. Sammy Lander.
Hello. Pleasure to be here. It's a good intro. It's a nice start.
You enjoyed that?
I like that a lot, yeah. I will have that on repeat.
Welcome, Sammy. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for your time. I know you come up, obviously, from Bournemouth, or more from Central London today.
Yeah.
So thanks for being with us. Football's first ever substitutions coach.
Yeah.
A pioneer in the game.
Niche, isn't it?
Niche, yeah. Tell us a bit more about that. What does that actually mean?
So for me, I always wanted to be in the top of football. You know, I want to test myself against the best. I want to be involved with the best. So my background probably doesn't allow me naturally to be in those circles. You know, I come from a tiny town. I don't have this big surname. You know what I mean? Like I don't have, Dorset isn't really filled with many football clubs, so there was a lot that wasn't necessarily in my favour. So I knew I had to do things a bit different. And different to me was the subs role, and obviously we'll chat a little bit about how it came about, but it was trying to do something different to make yourself relevant, to pitch yourself to the most important in the game, and that's where this role sort of originated from the need that I knew I had to do something different.
So you kind of started at Bournemouth in a coaching analytical role, analyst role.
Yeah.
Tell us about kind of how your journey began and how it's led to.
It's definitely niche. So I was in Bournemouth, in and around the academy, did some internships in recruitment. So I was a scout to start with. That sort of fell into then becoming analysis and a little bit more coaching. So really open experience at that time. I hadn't really selected a pathway to focus on, in the sense I'd done a little bit of everything. Then I met Mark Molesley, who was 23's manager at the time at Bournemouth, aligned with him in how he saw the game and how he wanted to work, as well as his assistant Tom Perdomo, and was offered the opportunity to then go to Weymouth and do an internship, and 3 hard years there, worked my way up from internship to first team coach, and then as first team coach, we back-to-back promotions, really successful period. As you came in that third year, was in the National League, up against it, part-time team in what is largely a full-time league now, and we'd gone through COVID. There was furloughing, we had a thin squad as it was, and that's where we played Maidenhead in the FA Cup, and there was talks that there might be a new signing, and Sammy Lander was that signing. And I got named as a substitute, and that was that light bulb moment, experiencing being a substitute, that led to the mad journey that I've been on with substitutions at the moment.
What was that light bulb moment? What did that feel like to you? What was it that light bulb that went off in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I love innovation to start with. Do you know what I mean? So I'm constantly looking at things differently, thinking, the saying I resonate with is results over tradition. So don't do something because it's been done for 100 years, do it because it's the best way to do it. And sometimes it comes to, I suppose, a negative, because you're overanalyzing stuff that maybe doesn't need to be. But I love looking at things differently, and experiencing being a substitute, I really looked at the role and looked at the detail and looked at the individual stats, what that does for a team's chance of winning, the personable side of being a substitute, and just looked into everything, and it was like, wow. Do you know what I mean? Like, that can't be it. That can't be it. Tell us about some of the stats that you were looking at. Yeah, so after the light bulb moment, got home and just thought, like, I've got to learn about the role. Do you know what I mean? I have to know what a substitute means to other people, and I started this sort of full-scale interview process where we met in Asda car park for one of them, and we talked about the role, what it meant to you, how have you been dropped, you know what I mean? How do you perceive being a sub? What's the connotations that come with it? All these different things, as well as the flip side of talking to managers, as in, how do you drop players? How do you prepare them from the bench? And all these answers sort of allowed me to create this sort of portfolio that I then looked at it and go, that's just like a majorly undervalued part of football, and a majorly underutilized part of football, and in today's world where goal in a Premier League's worth £1 million, you know what I mean? Like, to leave 5 subs to a gut chance, is just crazy. And so that naturally then generated a little bit more of a role.
I'm really interested to actually hear about some of the feedback you did get from the players, and some of the feedback you also got from the managers with regards to what that role looks like.
The biggest ones were players felt unprepared, You know, the amount of times that players go, oh, it's just, you know, so hard coming on an intense game of football. It's like basketball, you know, it takes you 10 minutes to get up to the speed of a game. Like, that was a very common one. But the bigger one was the feelings associated with being a sub, you know, the anxiousness, the defeated, the nervous, you know, the isolated, you know, that you've been in the shadows, that sort of stuff. And that was really resonated with me. That was like powerful to have people who had played the game say those things, you know, and it's because in your head you idolize football. You know, I was a little boy growing up wanting to be a footballer, and it's weird thinking that your dream job involves those words, you know, because you think it's all just sunshine and rainbows, and it was a real insight. And then on the flip side, managers were very much not guessing, that'd be the wrong term, but like gut, listening to their gut, you know, and maybe going with a hope rather than an objective plan. And it was like when you align those two, you've got sort of maybe a manager who's not overly sure on the best process, and you've got players who feel the way they feel, and then you meet them, there's no surprise that a player doesn't perform in the role of a substitute.
Essentially, your role was to bridge the gap,
Yeah.
right, between the manager's understanding, the player's disappointment, and help them to kind of both work as a team so that when the player does come on the pitch, it's, you know, they are producing their best for the team. How have you been able to?
Yeah, the best way to answer that is understand what the manager wants from a substitute, because been into loads of different teams and different managers value different parts, you know. So some managers love the psychological side of the role where I'm working with people. Some managers love the data side, so they loved having the know-how of when and where and why to make subs. So understand what they want, and then bring an education that allows me to deliver that to the players, you know, so that creates that alignment, because misalignment in football creates chaos, really, doesn't it? Because it's such fine moments and details and voices and stuff. So it was understand what A wants and then help get B to deliver it. And I think that's important.
So cool that you're able to bring both the facts and the scientific data together with your ability to connect and be personable with people, and that's psychological, and have empathy and understanding of different personality types and how to get the best out of certain individuals. How do you think, because you're as a footballer, you didn't really play football to a high level, right?
No.
So how was that a disadvantage to you in terms of actually trying to understand, you know, what it takes and what a player's going through and what a manager's going through, but also at the same time, how may it actually have been an advantage where you were able to come at it more from like an observer's viewpoint?
Yeah. So the disadvantages would be, you know, I think empathy is so important in today's world, and I think maybe not enough people have it, but it's also so hard to understand something that you've not experienced. You know, I can understand that someone has gone through something, but the raw emotion of them going through it is maybe not as understandable. So the disadvantage is that I haven't ever been a footballer, so I didn't know what it was like to be a sub. You know, when your mate's dad tells you you're a sub on Sunday League, it's not the same letdown as when, you know, a professional player gets taken, you know, minutes get taken from him. So that was the disadvantage, was that I had to learn a lot of things for the first time. But to flip that, the advantage would be that I had no tradition. You know, I was not normalised to anything in football. I was coming in with such a raw sort of observation, like you said, on the game, that it allowed me to really look at things and question them and think, like, is that it? Just because he says it, is that it? You know what I mean? And I think there's a balance for sure. And I think you have to learn the disadvantage to then learn the advantage for sure. But I think they complement each other, don't they?
Absolutely. I love that you're able to come in, like you say, because you've not necessarily been through the system. So, excuse me, you're not part of that kind of football narrative, that kind of football mental conditioning that we're all coming through the system, and we've all got the same kind of outlook and view on things. Like you say, stay with tradition, things are done this way, this is how things are viewed, perceived, etc. The boys I work with, I'm getting them to challenge the narrative all the time. I'm getting them to challenge their own learnings. You know, is that actually right, or is it just because, you know, for the last 20, 30 years that's what's been told? And like you say, you weren't necessarily a player coming through an academy. How and when did you know that you wanted to be in football, in sport, impact and change the game in a positive way? How do you know it was football? How do you know that was the path for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I suppose life was difficult when I was young. You know, it wasn't always I suppose an easy upbringing. There was hardship, as I'm sure everyone goes through, but I think that shapes your wants from life, that shapes what you want to get from life. When you go through those hardships, you learn about what's important. And I think during that period, I learned that I want to have a footprint in the world. I want to have a legacy. I want to have something that people look back on and go, that's what he stood for. And that was it for me. That the innovation, the be something different, the first subs coach, all this sort of stuff was like, growing up, I lost the eyesight in my right eye from car crash and all this sort of stuff. And it was like, can't play football. So what's the next best thing is working football. How do I then generate a legacy through that? And I'd like to think, again, life changes. Maybe when I'm 35, I will view life differently again because I generate and, a new version of me develops. But,
sure.
The version of me at the moment is very much, I want to have a footprint and have something to show my grandkids and, my kids, you know what I mean? And that sort of thing. And I think that really resonates with me, I suppose, is the best word.
Fantastic. And of course, in the sport that we all love for our sins. Interesting one for you. How much kind of resistance and pushback have you had to this, right? This is a new idea. This is what we're going to do. Because, football, I mean, even with what I do, it's been at times like football is kind of stuck in its ways, right?
Yeah, it can be brutal.
How have you navigated your way around that to help them to understand, no, this actually is going to benefit us?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning process. So initially it was, I would just go and present, and it would just be like, get it out there and show people. And it probably wasn't, it was always well received, but it was never maybe bought into.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference. And then it was like, okay, how do I market this so that it shows return on investment? Because now that's what clubs are run like. They run like businesses, aren't they? They want to know if they put that in, they want to get that back. So then it was like, how can I model this, excuse me, to look like a return on investment, and it's not just, you putting money into an empty sack. So it was player development, it was squad sustainability, it was how much is a goal worth? If your 10 subs have got no goals, could my 10 subs bring one goal? And that's worth £1 million. You pay me X amount, I've returned it in. That was a big learning process for sure. Because there were times I went and presented to a championship club and they all loved it, really positive feedback, but almost just looked at it and just took it themselves. They didn't they didn't sort of like say, oh, we want you to do it. It was like, yeah, we're going to use that now. So thanks for coming in. Yeah, get them safe.
Wow.
And like that, when I was 25, it's like guttering, you know what I mean? Because you're like, wow, how do I process that? You know what I mean? Like was it naive, or did I have to be that? You know what I mean? They're all lessons. And you look back now and you can laugh about it, thankfully. But at a time it was like, oh, that might have been the shot. That might have been the chance that's like gone. And so, yeah, a lot of learning along the way helps you understand how best to market yourself, your brand, your own personal brand and that sort of thing. And I think that's really important.
For sure. The only thing I'd say to you in that is that they might have taken, your kind of methodologies, your ideas, but they didn't get you.
They did not get
Sammy. They didn't get the brain and the character behind it. So they missed out. On that, and clubs that you've worked with and presented to, I've got here, obviously started at Bournemouth, Weymouth, where we met, AFC Wimbledon, Southampton, Everton, Chelsea, Brighton, England national team. And that's just in the UK. We'll come on to some of the teams abroad in a minute. But talk us through the kind of process there and who you have worked with, who you presented to there. I know you were in AFC Wimbledon as well.
Yeah, so I did a year at Wimbledon as the first subs coach. That was the big appointment, and
this was the first.
The origin of it, which was cool. And again, that year I look back was so useful because it allowed me to generate a theory into a substance. At first it was idea and methodology, and at the end of Wimbledon it was a living body. It was a thing that
case study, right?
Yeah, it was a case. Yeah, it'd come alive. I had this idea and this vision, and Wimbledon brought it alive, and it was a thing. And now I could take it to other places and grow it more, and that was really, really useful. Some of the other experiences were good because I was going into pitch to, some of the best minds in the game. People from those clubs you've mentioned that are, top of the game. Some of the best minds in football. So to run an idea past them, which is arguably in its not as rawest form, but still in a developmental stage, allowed to complement the details of it and allowed me to become better as well, because while the role develops, I also develop, and the fact we're coming hand in hand is only elevating what I deliver. So yeah, amazing experiences. Like I said, when I was at Weymouth, to say those clubs I would have presented to in 4 or 5 years' time would have been very humbling. Sorry, to think that. And so it was amazing to go and do those experiences is the best way. And a lot of hard work went into getting in front of those people because, like I said, football is a tight world. And as you sort of touched on at the beginning, I was sort of on the outside looking in. So to break the inner circle, as you will, or to break the mould, is arguably in itself probably my biggest accomplishment, is to just get in front of people with something brand new when I am who I am.
Absolutely, there's a massive credit to you that you're able to, like you say, break into what's more often than not a closed circle, really.
Yeah.
Especially when, you know, on the inside of the game. So well done. To come back to the AFC Wimbledon, like you say, first experience, you were there. How long were you there for?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for a whole year, right?
Yeah.
Did they give you the kind of license to, I mean, what sort of stuff were you doing there? What did you learn in that year from trial and error, testing, this, you know?
Yeah. Robbo was unbelievable. Like, I only have positive things to say about Mark Robinson, who was the manager at the time. He created this like really innovative environment. We had a mindset coach, we had a set piece coach, we had a high performance consultant, you know, really innovative for a League One side.
Wow.
With a slightly smaller budget, really young squad, you know, done differently. And that's testament to everyone at Wimbledon, you know, the way that they approach the game. So I was fortunate to be in that environment where they supported something a little bit different, you know, because I have been into places that maybe are not resistant, but don't fully advocate it, in which case you're up against it. And Wimbledon wasn't like that at all. So
Progressive club.
Really progressive, great word, yeah, progressive. And that allowed me to really express myself within it, you know, put my personality on it. Because again, it was a theory and everything that I pitched looks great on paper, but go and deliver it to a player on loan from Brentford or a player on loan from Watford, you know, or someone who's played 300 career games is completely different. And that was an experience where you have to learn along the way and make the right choices in the right moments and that sort of thing.
What would you say some of your key learnings were from that Wimbledon experience from the year, and also what were some of like your greatest successes in terms of actually being able to impact and affect perhaps a sub come on and maybe win the game? Or...
Yeah. There were lots of little successes that I've sort of all contributed maybe to a bigger success, which was, you know, we increased the productivity of our substitutes as a collective, you know, and I would never take full credit for it. You know, the boss deserves it, assistant manager, you know, all the good people in the club deserve that. The minor wins were, we had one that was an academy product come through. In academy football, you typically get an X amount of minutes, you know, it's not a role that's maybe educated being a substitute, and he struggled being a substitute 10 games in a row. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's brutal. Minutes is identity for players, so when you take away minutes, it hurts identity, you know, it's personal and all this sort of stuff. And what we sort of went on this mad journey, me and him together, where we just flipped the culture of being a sub, you know. Eventually he was accepting, and there was clarity, and there was empowerment behind the role, and we'd professionalized it. You know, there was a process to follow, and there was accountability, you know, and you could be a poor sub if you weren't following, you know, and there's all these sorts of things that eventually the whole club bought into, you know. And I got so many nice moments that are touched on in the book that we'll touch on a bit later on, but like moments where players frame substitute being differently, which is mad, because like you said, results over tradition suggests being a substitute is rubbish.
It's a negative thing.
It's a negative.
Brilliant. Well, you know, you're shifting the mindset towards being
reframing it completely different. Yeah, and that was a huge win for me. I would say it's arguably worth more than a sub goal, but football is a business now, and so you have to have those sides of it as well. And there was one moment where we played Morecambe. I'll touch on it in the book as well. Yeah. And played Morecambe, centre back and full back, huge amount of space in it. We noticed that we can utilise that. We do a halftime session with the subs, so 15-minute training session, and we're repeating this pattern. And we're like, this is going to be it. We've noticed it. We've practiced it. Muscle memory, pitch geography. It's all right. Second half, that player comes on, performs the exact moment, exact action in the exact part of the pitch that leads to a shot on target and a goal. And like that moment, you look at it and you go like, that's class. You know what I mean? Like, that's sick.
That's magic,
we
right?
Rehearsed it, and 15 minutes later, you've performed it.
When you said you were training that half, where are you training that? In the dressing room?
On the pitch. So yeah, on the pitch. Yeah. So we have a half, and we just do a halftime session, you know, because like you do a session on a Friday, don't you? Preparing the lads for what you think the game's going to look like. Well, now we do it at half time, but it's based off rawly what you see in the first half, you know, so it's even more real because we've seen it and it's happening, you know. So now it's a session that we've seen only 5 minutes ago. We've literally seen something happen. Let's train a way to exploit it, you know, or nullify a weakness, or Yeah.
How do you measure the improvement of productivity of the subs? You said that you noticed, like, how do you actually measure? What do you use to measure that?
Yeah, again, it's such a holistic role, as football is nowadays. Very rarely is there one metric to say that's what a football game is. You know what I mean? Like, even when you look at XG, you partner it with a whole host of other things. You look at the scoreline, you partner with a whole host of other things. So, being a sub is no different. So we would look at impact, we would look at outcome, and we would look at process. And they are all very important in analysing whether a substitute has got more productive or not. The individual contributions is something I prioritise a lot, because I think if I can help a player get better, then it's only going to collectively help the team. So if we can help player A go from 80% pass completion as a sub to 100%, that's only going to benefit the team. That's just a loose example. But then if that then feeds into him changing the scoreline 3 times as opposed to 1 time, then it's got a little bit bigger. And then if we frame it into, his value as a substitute is now so much that now teams want to buy him as a super sub.
Like John Duran.
Then John Duran, now we've developed it even. Do you know what I mean? So there's loads of different ways that you can sort of frame the productivity. And what we did at Wimbledon was, help the subs get better effectively in their individual sort of contributions, but also as their collective.
What would your week look like? You're a substitute. What is your week looking like, and what would your match day look like? Oh, you've touched on it slightly, but
yeah, it's a little bit different. Obviously, it varies depending on what sort of contract the team wants. You know what I mean? Okay. Sometimes it could be done remote, in which case it will be very online and databases and that sort of thing. If a team wants me to be there in person, then I'm in the training ground, and again that looks a little bit different. So it depends a little bit, but I would say for me the big days are Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So match day -2, -1, and then match day, because I think that's when players start to get an idea of who's playing, and that's when you can start building a methodology for the players to follow to become good. You almost have to start 3 o'clock and work backwards, to say who's going to be a sub, who's the opposition, what does the game look like? So what do we need to prepare them? What do we need to call them? What resources do we have to have available for them? You know what I mean? So it starts and works back, and that will be done from sort of Thursday onwards.
This is interesting as well, right? Because some managers, they'll just name the team like on the day, turn up 1:30, team goes up, right?
Yeah.
So was it then important for Mark Robbins to work with you to say, like, to understand, okay, I need to know what's my team going to be, let's say by Thursday, to give you an opportunity to actually work with the players rather than just turning up on a Saturday and now all of a sudden you've got to pick up the pieces, like.
Yes and no. Like, ideally yes, but my job is to complement the manager. So if the manager, so Robbo decides to go, we're going to do it Saturday at 1:30. That's my job to ensure the transition is smooth, the methodology is delivered, the personability is applied, so I have to be flexible and adaptable, because I don't ever want to call the shots. I'm there to complement. So yeah, I think ideally, I was talking to a manager who would name it on the Tuesday.
Wow, was early as the Tuesday for the Saturday?
Yeah, mad.
I've never had that.
Huge amount of time to prepare, because his theory was that it allows players to just fully process it. It's what we call a deselection hangover.
Yeah.
If you get it on the Tuesday, your hangover's gone by the Saturday for sure. So that's advantageous. But also there are moments that will challenge that. Because all of a sudden someone gets injured Thursday, and then you call a sub in. Is it then all of a sudden they were like, oh well, I wasn't first choice. Now I'm a backup, and there's always going to be those things. You know what I mean? So for me, it's just a compliment.
Again, really interesting you say that, because some managers will say, well, I'm not going to name the team on a Tuesday because then that's immediate disengagement
from those
who aren't, and then you've lost, 8 players for the training week. So the levels of the training obviously goes down massively. And then if there is an example where someone gets injured on a Friday and now I've got to call you up who hasn't been training properly a week and maybe even been out, that's a difficult situation.
Yeah, exactly that.
So what would you say ideally kind of by Thursday, you know the team, so that gives you maybe Thursday afternoon to pull the subs to the office and be like, right, this is what we're doing. This is our methodology. This is how you're gonna come on and impact the game.
Yeah, I think ideally, in an ideal setup, I'm probably told Thursday, and the manager's maybe got an 80% sure of what his 11 looks like Thursday. It's maybe confirmed Friday, and then Friday afternoon is when the magic comes alive, and we've got a substitute specific session based for the guys that are going, or the gals that are going to be, you know, the subs that week. And then it allows me in the evening to then get their clips ready, their, you know, individual development plans, their, you know, resources, all this sort of stuff to make it as personable as possible for those players to engage with the role.
What's the most difficult situation that you found yourself in with a group of subs or a particular individual that you've had to help them kind of work through quickly?
I would say it's always the psychological side of it, and arguably the physical. You know, a good one is how often do players go down the touchline, drop to a knee, maybe open the gate, chat to their mate, and then walk back up. And in maybe
that's the warm up.
That's the warm up. And in maybe 10 minutes' time, they have to go on into this frantic, intense game, as described by themselves, to impact it. And so that's a tough one, only because it's tradition and it's them almost going against the grain a little bit to show their frustration, you know, and express their frustration, but they do it almost by hurting their own preparation. And I think that can be quite damaging. So we have different ways to address that. But I would say psychologically is the bigger one, because if you instantly get told you're a sub and you tune out and you cut off and you distance from reality, you know, it's so hard to be a sub, even when you're in a great mood, let alone when you're in a, you know, a shocking mood. So yeah, they're the bigger ones. When players maybe have bad memories of rejection, of resilience, of, you know, distancing, you know what I mean? That's where you have to really challenge them.
Do you, like, when the boys go to warm up, will you go with them and be like, take them through their warm up, or are you more sat on the bench? Are you talking to them whilst you're on the bench, being like, watch this, or like, look what he's doing? Would you do that?
Yeah, I try to be involved as possible, because I think players have a way of disengaging if they're not maybe held accountable. And again, you can set challenges. So like with the physical thing, you have a cue card to warm up with, so they get accountability. But halftime, I'm there. Pre-game, I'm there. Bench, I'm there. You know what I mean? And you because it's also a relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's massive. Yeah. That's massive for them. Maybe just have a bit of reassurance, a bit of positive reinforcement, you know, whatever it is that provokes them to be high performing. That's for me to deliver. And so, yeah, I try to be engaged as possible. And like you said, it's mad sitting on a bench with 6 professional footballers going, what would you do here? You know, the debates, the conversations is like what you dream as of a kid. You know what I mean? With these elite minds of the game that have had these cool educations saying, I would double up here, you know, I'll go down the line, he needs to cut in, and, you know, and I think there's so much value in that as well.
It's excellent, right? Because like you said, right, it's so easy to disengage, switch off, you're not playing, you're not watching the game, but you could be on.
Yeah, any second.
You know, you could be on.
Yeah.
And there's a boy I've been working with recently who's gone to a new team. He's in the team now, but when he first went there, he was on the bench.
Yeah.
And I used to say to him, like, you know, what can you do when you're on the bench to prepare yourself to come on, right? Whether that's warm up properly, but his main thing, really intelligent guy, knows the game really well. His main thing, he's a winger. So he'll be like, I'm going to watch the opposition right back or the left back and see, okay, you know, what are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? When I come on, how can I beat them? How can I influence? How can I impact? What's the winger who's on now doing that's not working? What's he doing that's work? So we've got him to a stage where whether he starts, whether he doesn't, he for the 90 plus minutes, whatever it is, he's fully engaged.
That's class.
And even to understand what value can you give to the team, even if you're actually not playing. So maybe he can come in at half time, be like, Sammy, I've noticed, listen, if you go on the outside instead of keep coming in, you'll get more joy. Just try it, you know? So it's always trying to find a way for, like you say, for the player to feel valued, loved, and that they can add value.
I think that's massive. I think that's massive. And like you say, it's a process. Players love process.
Yeah.
Like as much as they'll give you a little bit of you know what I mean, got to follow this. Players love it. Players love having a job. They love having a purpose. You know, what came from these interviews was that players felt they're in the shadows, you know, in a sport where like everything is tracked, everything is, you know, looked at, everything is, when all of a sudden you become a sub, you get nothing, you know, And I'm not saying that's the great answer, but there needs to be a balance of like, have your own time, but have a process to follow. And that's what the methodology of a substitute is. You know, you have to have a process to follow to prepare yourself. It's not just luck, is it? You don't just get lucky and be a good sub. You have to have a process to follow.
Why do you think that it's important for someone like yourself to be that person that does that as opposed to the manager? Like what's better about you doing, would you say,
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I would say there are times where I've had to probably go to the manager and say he needs you more than he needs me.
Wow.
Yeah, so because it need to come from like the position of power. You know what I mean? I might have a little bit of authority or, you know, maybe respect. I don't know what the right word is for it, but because you're in the hierarchy of a coaching team, but it might mean that it like needs the manager to go and console, you know, but if the manager consoles everybody, you know, we're in a brutal game at the moment where fixtures are so saturated. The calendar, isn't it, where you go in Saturday, Tuesday, particularly in Football League, that maybe managers don't have that time. And if they are given that time, is it being lost somewhere else, you know, with the starters? You know, then maybe the starters miss out, in which case they're the guys that arguably have been selected to get the result done in the first place. So how I sort of position it or sort of pitch it to managers is that, you know, my job can be to complement you. So when you're just giving everything to the 11 to make sure we win the game, I can be the guy that's, you know, picking up the more subtle cues of players, you know, and the shadows and that sort of thing. And I think, again, players resonate with me quite nicely. I'm a little bit younger, 28, you know what I mean? So I've been doing this role for 4 or 5 years. So I've been in my mid-20s.
Like a big bro type.
Yes,
big brother type.
Similar music, similar conversation, similar food. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're very relatable because we're in the same stage of our life. So I can, and also I've got experience by saying, yeah, you know, I've worked with 100 players that feel like you feel like, and this is how we got it to become where it is now. And I think the relatableness of it is so important, because in a moment where you feel isolated from the team, being able to relate to someone is so crucial, I think. And so, yeah, I think that's why it's important to have someone do the role. But I'm not saying that there aren't times that maybe a manager needs to step in and say, I'm here as well. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. And also, you're not coming from a threatening position. Like you know, you're not trying to take their space.
Exactly that.
You want the best for them and the best for the team.
Yeah, and I would say the other point of that, just to sort of pick up what you were saying, is that I'm not just making the big decisions. Yeah. I'm not going, if you tell me that your head's gone, I'm not the one that picks whether you go in the team or not. I'm here. I always liken it to me just being an extra. Yeah. And this is like the headliner of the TV show, and I'm just the extra that's just got to make this headliner look unbelievable. You know,
supporting act.
Yeah, just the hype man, effectively, to get him from A to B in his most, you know, or her most ready position. And then that's my job done, you know. And I think, again, the dynamic of that relationship is slightly different from when a manager is going, you know, making the decisions of you're in, you're not in. And I think that's a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting as well what you said before about the manager to help, because a lot of players I work with as well, you know, players up and down the country everywhere, they get upset if, and I probably was one of them as well, if the manager doesn't come to you and tell you, look, son, I'm not playing you today or this. But actually what you're saying, what you were saying before is helping the players to understand the manager doesn't necessarily have the time or the mental or emotional capacity to deal with all 20, 25 players. And like you said, he needs to focus on the starting 11 and have some kind of connection and empathy with.
Yeah.
But I think that's where your role really helps.
Massively, yeah. And like I said, the manager can have a conversation, but, you know, he maybe couldn't sit down with you for an hour and a half. Yeah. You know, because imagine if you do that for 11 players on a Friday afternoon, he's getting home at 3 a.m., you know what I mean? And then he's got to be up. So, like, if the manager, how I sort of say it, if you can just tell them, as a manager, your reasoning, then I can be the guy that goes in and complements that, you know, so then we can sit down and say, well, yeah, you're not starting, but these are the clips I found from the last 15 minutes of the game from the team we're playing and their fullback. So, you know, maybe talk about your winger that you're working with. This is what the fullback looks like in the last 15 minutes of games.
Yes.
Notice how he gets fatigued and he drifts way too narrow. So when you come on tomorrow, this is something we want to work. How about we jump out on the grass and try it? You know, just me and you, and we just have a bit of laugh of it. And, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, then there's a relationship, or having a bit of fun with it. There's a process, and I'm being so specific to you that you're then like, that's my right, it's my job. And I think there's so much value in that, you know, whereas the managers can't do that for 22 players, like you said.
We want that love as a player, you know, you want that love, you want
so
that, you want to
powerful,
feel valued, you want to feel like you are a part of the team. We want someone to say, when you come on tomorrow, this is how you're going to impact the game. Even if it's for 5 minutes, you want to come on and have a positive influence. And many players come on for 5 minutes and say, you know,
toss it off.
Basically, because, you know, it's like, you're asking me to come on for 5 minutes, you know, but it's to try to help them to see that there is still, see the opportunity, even in their minds, just 5 minutes, but there is still opportunity to come on and score the winner or score the equaliser and be the hero.
Yeah, the really interesting one, I worked with a team in Iceland, and the manager said to me in one of our first chats, like, epic guy, he said, it's a cup final, would you rather start or finish the cup final? He said to a player, and the player was just like, had no idea what to answer, because it was
question.
like, you want to finish it because then you're the hero, aren't you? Like, you're in it and you're winning it. But if you start it, there's a chance that you don't finish it. Do you know what I mean? And so it's like, it was the first time I've ever heard that as well, and it got me thinking, like, what a way to frame that. You know what I mean? As in, like, I don't know what the right answer is. You know what I mean? But it gets people thinking of, like, there is always a role to play. And it can look like anything, it could look like you don't play at all. But if you help as a centre-back, your substitute striker go on and score the winning goal, you've arguably contributed and you've added value, and it's all the different ways you can frame it. So it's mad, isn't it?
What would you rather?
I would rather be a subs coach and win it from the bench.
Very good. And you've teed yourself up nicely to lead to, obviously, your book, Finishers.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the book.
Yeah.
Tell us a lot about the book.
Yeah, it's been a mad process. Like, it probably wouldn't have ever been something when I was failing English and GCSE that I thought I would have tried to be a best-selling author one day. So it's mad to think that journey has been a journey in itself. So it sort of came out a little bit. I was always pushed to write it because I think it's important. You can get it to so many corners of the world where arguably maybe I can't, with my voice or my presence. So by getting it out there, it can influence so many more people's journeys, from any level of football, isn't it? From under 10s to the best in the world. So I was always recommended to, and it was always a bit of like do you know what I mean? Like, should I? Because it's not my natural maybe ability to do that. So I sat down and then I just started going at it, and it flew from my mind. Like, everything that I have done, the experiences, like, into this book, and it was, it just like got layered and layered and layered, and before I know it, I was, it like come out and it was selling, and it, it's got to some really awesome places, and I just sent a copy to Brazil, which is mad. You know what I mean? Like, that someone in Brazil is going to be holding that book is crazy. So yeah, it's been a cool journey, definitely new. And again, I think I've got the bug for it now, because I definitely want to become a 2-time best-selling author, for sure.
I hope you've got it translated in Portuguese.
I actually haven't. I have had an offer to translate into French.
Oh.
Yeah, which is being done at the moment. So yeah. It'll be parler en français.
I'm interested to ask you, because I'm hearing this word a lot, even step 3, step 4 managers. Yeah. This is a starting 11. You lot are going to be the finishers. Where is that? Did you create that word?
No, that's Eddie Jones. That's Eddie Jones's magnificent mind. Yeah. He's wonderful, and again, I've read around his work of finishers and his ideology around it and that sort of thing, and it's brilliant. All I would say is I feel like we've added layers to it. Yeah. Because I think, like you said, step 4 players are using finishers. It's becoming quite normal now, that term. It's almost maybe on par with substitutes. Because it's like so normal.
Even more so, I think.
Maybe even more normal. Yeah.
Last couple of seasons.
It's normalised in a player's terminology. That's probably the best way, is that players know what a finisher is now. So we took it one step further and was like, well, let's create types of finishers.
Okay.
So we assigned tactical roles to psychological names to effectively help players understand what's being asked of them, but to also frame it in a way that complements their identity. So your closers, your energizers, your impactors.
Tell us what. So
yeah,
what's, I'm interested.
Loads of different ones.
What's a closer?
So a closer will be someone who comes on, promotes game management, sees the result out. When you put them on at 1-0, they come off with 1-0. That they are there to close the game out for you.
Centre half, CDM.
It could be anything. It could
Even
be a
a big man
striker.
up top.
Yeah. It could be a winger who's just way more defensive than he or she is attacking. It could be anything. And an energizer is, we're massively tired. We played Tuesday. We're now playing Saturday. We need energizers. You're going to go on and be judged upon your ability to energize this team. We need a motivator. We're away at our rivals. They're giving it some. We need you to go and lift the midfield back up. Go be a motivator. You know what I mean? All these different things.
Come on, I want to hear more. What else?
Yeah, well, it's mad, because like we got to one stage of a club where we phrased it with actual player names. So we'd have Defoes, you'd have Crouchies, you'd have Solskjaers, and
brilliant.
Yeah, and it's mad how much that can do for a player's vision of the role, because you're all of a sudden you're saying Solskjaer, you're going, well, arguably what's he known for? All the moments that he popped up off the bench, he's known as the super sub, isn't he? And so it reminds players that there is a role to play and that it can look like this. And yeah, there is so much value in it. And it works both ways. A, you create alignment. So when a manager says closer, is so much clarity around now what that means. Everybody around, staff, players, fans, starters, all now know what closer means. So you're sending a message on by putting a closer on. The other side of it is that players are now going, I'm a closer. That's my role today. You know, I'm not a sub. I'm not a finisher. I'm not forgotten. I'm a closer. That's my identity, you know, and it's different ways that you can frame it. So definite value.
Let's say I'm a closer for today, but next week I might be a starter, but next week I might be an energizer. So are the players able to be versatile in that, or do they get like, oh no, I'm a closer, so if you ask them to start, it then becomes difficult?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in the book, I talk around how international football is so much easier to assign people to certain roles because you have this mad talent pool of players. You know, like in the US, you have millions of players to choose from, so you can lay out all their data and you could pick the 5 best closers, you know, because they're the best closers. When you're working with a club, you're a little bit more selective because you're working with the players that you've got in the building. You know, you can't just go out and say, I want him. You know, you have to coach a player within your building. And so that's then when you coach a process to become an energizer, a closer, a driver, an exciter, all the different ones. You know what I mean? So
what's the most popular one? Like, what would I want to be as a player?
As a centre back,
yeah,
I would say a destroyer.
Okay.
Destroyer, yeah. Destroyer come from a really possession-based team I work with, and they wanted to stop counter-attacks.
Yeah.
So it was like, you need to go be a destroyer. You know, that's your role today, and obviously you assign a few other little bits with it, but destroyer was, you know, or a smoother was the other one. Yeah, nice smoother. That always gets.
That's more me.
Yeah, there's a real possession-based one, that one. So that's nice. But yeah, it's I would say that I could coach anyone to become anything. It's the process that allows that to happen.
What would you describe yourself as? Most resonate with?
An impactor.
An impactor.
Yeah. Just like 10 to 15 at the end, you know, bring a little bit of momentum into the game, get excited the fans, impact the scoreline, you know, impact your return on investment.
You're a businessman on the pitch as well.
Yeah.
You touched upon, right? You spoke about abroad in America. So obviously we spoke earlier about the clubs that you work with and presented with here in the UK. I've got here Al Nassr, Toulouse, LAFC, Central Coast Mariners, US national team as well.
Yeah. So a lot of those were presentations, to be fair. So I presented to, I worked a little bit with an individual head of analysis at Al Nassr, which was cool. Brand new league for me. Toulouse was a presentation. Central Coast Mariners was Mark Jackson, who's really excited manager, but I presented to him when he was at, I think he just left MK. He was with Leeds. He worked under Bielsa, like really, really insane mind of football, like really detailed. But US national team, yeah, it was a really good experience to be involved in a couple of international camps with them.
What did that look like for you?
It was remote, which was good. It complemented the schedule at the time, but it was brilliant to just be involved in that level of football. Do you know what I mean? Like 4 or 5 years ago, I was, you know, we're playing Paul Towns, we're playing Salisbury's, you know, we're playing...
With respect.
Yeah, of course. And I love that. I love non-league football, you know, but it just goes to show the journey that you can go on, you know, and the spectrum of football is just far and wide, you know what I mean? And it's mad to think I was there and in a couple of years I was there, do you know what I mean? It's like, it was a real nice moment to reflect upon and think, this journey's taken me on a real roller coaster.
How did you get there? How did someone who's, like we said from the start, kind of started from the outside, somehow find your way in and then end up, you know, kind of climbing and growing and progressing and evolving and end up with the US national team? It's
a lot about resilience. You know, I've lost count the number of rejections I have had in life. I talk about it in the book. That's like, because I started tallying rejections. I started counting them because I was always told you have to be rejected 1,000 times to be successful. And so it was like, right, I'm going to get to 1,000.
How many are you on?
250 was the last sort of count. So I'm definitely working my way there. But again, it's how you define yourself, isn't it? Do I define myself as 250 rejections, or define myself as world's first subs coach, best-selling author? Do you know what I mean? It's how you look at it, isn't it? So a lot of resilience, a lot of rejection, and I just think you have to be so persistent with how you reach out to people. LinkedIn, I think, is crazy that not everybody is on LinkedIn. Like if you're an aspiring young football coach, football analyst, football anything, you know, the amount of people you can reach on LinkedIn is wild. You know, like the amount of teams and the caliber of people, and I would just fire emails and messages out like they were like I was going out of business. You know what I mean? Like it was just 10 a day, just fire, and just hope that one came back. And then one comes back and you generate, and, presentation happens. They put you on to the next person, and, before you know it, it's become something. So
still early in the journey.
Yeah.
But what do you see yourself? What's the goal? Is it a coach? Is it a manager? Is it?
Yeah, it's so tough because I think I'm still learning along the way. I think coaching gives me the most pleasure. As in I love being on the grass. I love people. I love helping people achieve stuff from A to B. Like all that stuff is the fulfillment that if I were to leave football, I would have to have a job that gave me that sort of similar consistency of people, A to B, goal, journey, that sort of stuff. So individual development coach is largely what this role resembles, because you're working with players one-to-one to help them achieve something. So I'd love to be an individual development coach.
Like a 21s.
Love to be
even
21s.
In the first team, Premier League.
15s, 16s, you know what I mean? Just helping people achieve their goal is huge pleasure to me. So I think that would be somewhere down the line, I'd like to think, but I will never say no to anything. I will give everything a go, until someone tells me to stop. So I'd like to give everything. I always say, like, I sort of grew up with not a lot of experience, and now I just want to do everything.
Yeah.
That's sort of where the book came about. It was like, well, I've never done it, so why don't I try it? And I might have some fun with it. You know what I mean? Similar to the podcast. You know what I mean? Like, just go and give it a go and see where it takes you. Yeah, you might love it, you might hate it, but see how it is.
Obviously, you've spoken about working with the boys that know that they're going to be subs, maybe on a Thursday or Friday, working with them. Like, how exactly do you help them to reframe the way that they view their position as a sub? Like, what would an individual session with one of them, what would it look like?
That's a good question. I think understanding the person is so important, because then you can understand what they need. So there will be people, a fascinating revelation for me is we was walking back up from training on a Friday, body language has gone a little bit from this player, head's starting to wobble a little bit, and I start pressing a little bit about what it is about a sub that you don't like, like where has it come from, what specifically is it? And this specific incident was players said that minutes is identity. That's what it means. So if you take away minutes, you take away who I am as a person. And that was like, wow. Do you know what I mean? Like, wow. So now you think you're nobody because you're a sub. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's just first time I'd ever heard anything like that powerful. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, well, in this case, I don't need to take you out and do a session with you. I need to help you understand that you are a somebody off the pitch, on the pitch, on the bench. I need to show you another identity. How does this player who's been on the bench 10 games in a row understand how to add value to a game when they might be brought on once every 2 months? So for me, it was like, you can be my role. You go warm up the strikers. I don't need to do it. You go lead the halftime session. You go warm up the wingers. And again, I talk about the Morecambe incident earlier, where out to in run, and we got a really good moment from it. That all come from a centre-back warming up the winger. I had no involvement in that, apart from to maybe press the centre-back and say, can you just go warm the winger up? It was his idea to set it up in that part and do this, and drill at me and go down the line. And, you know what I mean? It was all him. Post-game, when that moment comes off, that centre-back then feels like he's got a role to play, and he's added value. And that's mad in a mad journey, of A to B. And again, it's so case dependent, because the beauty of it is that every person is different. And so that's what I like. I like that every situation I'm in is a little bit different, but it's about understanding who they are and what they need to then reframe it, and I think there's such value in that for sure.
How do you get the players to buy in? I mean, some will be more open to it, maybe the younger ones. That might be presumptuous of me. Others may be more resistant to it. How do you get the one who's resistant to it initially to come with more of an open mind and buy into it?
The beauty of it is that you're solving their problem.
Yeah.
And that's it's the way you frame it and pitch it to them, is that, like, on a Saturday at 4:15, when it's 75 minutes in and you've got to come on, I don't have to come on. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to go and, run in behind. I don't have to fight a 6'6" centre back. It's not my problem. It's your problem. And all I'm here to do is to help you. That's it. And so, again, sometimes you sit down and you say, well, what is it you don't like about a sub? Oh, it's it's tiring, it's hard, it's that. And then all of a sudden you go, well, I can probably fix that for you. Like, if we go on a journey together, we can probably make that better for you if you want it to be better. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I want it to be better? Because, it's a full cycle, isn't it? It's like you be a good sub, you might get given a start, you then get a run of starts, you then might get an injury, and then you're right back where you began. Football is a full circle movement, isn't it? So it's about identifying that if you can be a good sub, it's usually the first step to getting back into the team, which is ultimately where I want you to be and where you want to be. So it's just having a plan and a progress. And I think that's easy to frame it like that.
How big a role, how big an impact are you able to actually have through the culture of the club? Or does that depend on, how involved the manager or, the staff allow you to get?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's moments in my career where I would say I've definitely had that, where the Twitter page would change to finishers rather than subs, like the lineups that they tweet, they would have finishers, and so they're tweeting it, and then all of a sudden fans are using it, what I mean? And all of a sudden I've like influenced sort of through a domino effect the way that our following is referring to it, and like that for me is a mad moment. There are also other moments where players will use like Energizer on their social medias, which is like a big thing in today's way. That you've got like a player, we had a player on loan from Brentford use the term Energizers on his Instagram stories like most weeks, you know what I mean? And it was like, that's our terminology, you know what I mean? And it's like, imagine 10 years ago a player, not that maybe social media would be as big of a thing, but a player putting something up and saying substitute, it'd be, it would be slightly unusual. But it's looked at now as a real movement.
But it's true though, the way, help them to change it into a word that comes across as more positive.
Empowering, isn't it?
Empowering, absolutely. Empowering. No, really cool. Really, really cool. What would you say are the 3 kind of main or key tips and takeaways that one can expect to learn from reading the book?
I would say experience in building a methodology for your own substitutes, because I think that's crucial in bridging the gap, like making it a professional role. That's the book talks about all the different social side, physical, technical, tactical, psychology. It talks through all the different processes so you can pick what you like out of it, so it can build a methodology. The second is I think it helps you understand how to understand your players' viewpoints on being a substitute, which again then probably influences that methodology that you need to build, because if players don't like the social side of being a sub, then you read about the social side of the chapter and you build your own social methodology. And thirdly, I think the ability to, a little bit more personal, but maybe go for what you believe in and don't conform because someone told you to. If you believe there's genuine value in that book or in that idea that you've got or in that something, then to convict it, say it with your chest and find ways to promote it, I suppose. It's
like what Ruben Amorim said recently, I will not change.
Yeah.
Who's the book for, would you say? Who's the ideal buyer, consumer audience of the book? Who
coaches,
does it help?
Definitely coaches, because like I said, it's a coaching manual. It takes you on a journey of you understanding your subs, building your subs, representing your subs. But also for people, I know a lot of people have taken value that maybe don't work in football but want to, and that when you're online, you're looking at jobs, that you don't always need to find a job. You could make a job, so it's a bit weird, but like
we share that.
Like if you don't see something that takes your fancy, try and create something that takes your fancy, so like the refereeing analyst that I think is going to become a thing, that could be someone's future. Someone could create that role, go and have a mad career with it, delivering clubs refereeing analysis reports to help them understand refs. That could be a journey, but that's not advertised at the moment. So the book promotes hopefully that as well, as in like chase your dreams, go and have a go at it, market yourself into relevance, all that sort of stuff.
Fantastic. Where can we find the book? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much on LinkedIn. I'm not big on the socials, so LinkedIn's my big one, and the book is available for sale on Amazon at the moment. I think there's talks of it. I think it's now on Kindle, and there's talks of it going on other platforms, but right now it's Amazon is the best place to find it.
What would be your best piece of advice to managers dealing in the way that they deal with finishers, energizers, substitutes, and also what would be your best piece of advice to the finishers themselves, who are a player who maybe at the minute is can't get into the starting 11, but he's a finisher?
My advice to managers is understand the why, because once you understand the why, you can answer it, and I think that's a big step in the right direction. My advice to players is have accountability. because it's only going to help you in the long run. Like eventually it will be you that benefits from this ability to take your process professionally. That will aid your career. There's no loopholes. I'm not trying to catch you out. Like if you be a good sub, usually you then get rewarded, with more minutes, more playing opportunities and the rest. So I think they are the bigger rewards. So have accountability as players, understand the why as coaches.
I think we'll end it there. Sammy, thanks so much, man. Great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Big fan of the platform. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sammy.
Cheers.
See you soon. Good luck with everything.
Thank
all
you
right?
very much. Cheers.